Thank you so much for coming. I generally don't like doing such interviews because the person across from me, I generally am skeptical. I don't like them, and anything they say is a lie. But this is the exception, which is why I agreed to do it. I am loosely familiar with Envoy. I'm somewhat familiar with Blink, and I'm thrilled to interview you today about what's going on with the two companies because it was not clear to me, and there's a lot going on. So welcome, Aric. Let me clear my questions. All right. So first of all, Blink, the brand, is most closely associated with charging networks. And only last week I learned that there is a lot more going on. There's Blink, the parent, there's all these subunits. Can you please explain the Blink brand, the subunits, who's doing what, what's happening?
Yeah, and thank you. So Blink Charging has been around for a while, I think since like 2009. But just in the last few years, they've done a really great job, the leadership there, on acquiring other charging companies and other companies that really create an amazing company. So, most notably, probably SemaConnect, just in the past couple of years, Blue Corner out of Europe. So now they're a global EV charging network company and manufacturer. So they actually manufacture chargers in Bowie, Maryland, here in the U.S. And I think in this past quarter, they reported some of their highest earnings, record earnings. So they're doing really great. But beyond that, in the charging, they do have a subsidiary called Blink Mobility, which I'm running with a great team. And Blink Mobility is a little departure from EV charging. We do electric car sharing. And within that organization, we have Blue LA and Envoy. But yeah.
All right, so Blink owns Blue LA and Envoy. What does Blue LA do?
So Blue LA is a public-private partnership with the city of LA, LA DOT, funded by CARB, where we have electric vehicles on the streets of LA that Angelinos and guests can rent by the minute and kind of like in packages as well. It's a membership car sharing program, and that's been running for about 5 or 6 years, I think now. I just recently took over leadership as president of Blink Mobility, but really great program, 40 stations across the city of LA. Each station has up to five chargers, so you can pick up a car from one location and drop it off at another location. And then over the next couple of years, we'll probably be expanding to a total of 100 locations.
So are these dedicated parking spots with chargers?
Yeah, they're repurposed metered spots that we're putting EV chargers on the curbside, and you're able to pick up a vehicle from curbside and drop it off at another station on the curb.
Can't anyone show up and use the chargers with another vehicle?
Currently, no, but in the future, that could definitely be additional resources for people to charge their vehicles.
What does Envoy do?
Yeah, so Envoy is a company that I started about 6 years ago with a co-founder. We came from commercial real estate. Most of my career was in commercial real estate, everything from institutional asset management to ground-up development to multifamily. We were doing development in Arlington, Texas, which was very car-centric. It was right next to the University of Texas, right across the street from kind of this larger expansion they did. And we were looking to build about a 400-bed student housing facility, really looking at what student housing 2.0, what kind of amenities would we add. Some of our competitors had not only the pool and the gym, but they had like tanning rooms and arcade rooms and poker rooms. And we were trying to be like, well, if I was serious about my studies and I wanted to live in a place that, could help me, what kind of amenities would I put in that building? So transportation was one of them that was very early on the list. Like, it would be great if I had a bike that I could go to class with and come back, or a car I could go drive for personal reasons, or even drive for the gig economy. That would be a great amenity in the community. The other hurdle we were facing as developers is the city wanted us to build way too much parking, and we were looking at ways to reduce the parking requirement. So we approached planning and zoning and city council and said, we're going to include car sharing as an amenity, and we want to reduce our parking by, it was about 50%. They were very receptive. It actually enabled the development to actually move forward due to the cost reduction from not building that parking. And from that point, we actually said there's something here, and we created Envoy. So long story short to say, Envoy partners with real estate developers to provide private car sharing in communities. So you're sharing vehicles with your neighbors and like-minded individuals. So we can really match the car type to the community type. So it really allows car sharing to really grow beyond, that 20-year-old to 30-year-old kind of demographic, right?
So the Blue LA fleet within would have a station at one of these real estate developments?
So that's what Envoy does now as kind of a sub-brand. Envoy partners, we're in about 50 cities, 20 states, where we have cars at, luxury developments.
Different cars, different fleet.
Different cars, typically, anything from Teslas to...
the Rivian I saw parked outside.
We have properties with Rivians, Porsche, but we also have student housing with Chevy Bolts and Nissan Leafs.
All right. There's a lot to unpack there, and skeptical Alex Roy is here now. So years ago, I lived in Paris, and this is decades ago, and I took the train a lot. On a trip around 2012, there are these Autoleave was the name of the company. People have tried stuff like this before. For whatever reason, Autoleave did not work out. What are the lessons of the suboptimal deployment of shared EVs in Paris from 10 years ago? What are those lessons? And what are you doing differently that potentially will make this work?
Well, talking about what's different now, I'd say, technology has changed a lot. We started this business 6 years ago. I think our average range of a vehicle was 100 miles. So even technology, the vehicles has changed, but technology on how we operate them, how you access the vehicles. Back then you would have to rely on cellular only, which, if you're in a dead spot, you wouldn't be able to connect to a car and unlock it. So technology has changed to make this more efficient, but, shared mobility, I give the example that, after COVID, I felt like bubblegum shrimp, like after the hurricane, right? Like where they went out to sea, they weathered the hurricane, they came back, and they were the only other shrimping company out there, right? So during the last 5 years, we've lost companies like Reach Now, Car2Go. It's a difficult shared mobility in general. I mean, even looking at unicorns like Bird, who saw the highest valuation of any company any time, like there's a struggle to figure out how to make shared mobility work. So what I would say is we have a really strong team. We probably have more collective knowledge than any other electric car sharing group out there between the two teams. Both of us have been in it for over 5 years, and operationally, that knowledge has come together, and we built our technology from the ground up. So instead of using technology that was made by others that are not in operations and don't operate their own fleets and don't know what car sharing is, we built it from the ground up, knowing exactly what we need to scale this business.
Going off script, got to ask. I couldn't help but notice back in Paris at the time that the cars did not seem to be regularly maintained on a daily or even a weekly basis. So what are the logistics of maintaining the Blue LA fleet? You have a forward depot. What does that look like?
I'm not going to say it's easy, especially in the city of LA. I mean, we're talking about somebody's idea about putting, EV chargers with copper cords and cars on the streets of LA, and things do happen. But I think what we're working on is using technology to really enable our team to understand in real time what is happening to the fleet and how we can assist our customers. Because we want our customers to have the best experience possible. They should be able to walk up to a vehicle, have the vehicle they rented there in that spot, it be clean and easy to access throughout their trip. So it's a work in progress, I would say.
Envoy. When I spent 4 years working at a self-driving company. And I was living in Miami, and one of the ideas we floated was going to real estate developers and offering, say, credits for rides in autonomous vehicles, and that they could maybe bake that into a commercial lease or a residential lease, and that we would maybe negotiate exclusivity, and no other AV developer could get such a deal, and we would lock up the whole market. It was an idea. We began having those talks. What are the kinds of deals that you've struck already with Envoy like that? Because that's what it sounds like. I mean, could a competitor roll into one of the developments you've made a deal and begin a price war?
Well, we sign long-term agreements with the properties. It's a partnership. The big thing is we're coming from the lens of real estate developers and operators. So we work hand in hand with them on leasing campaigns, like, rent an apartment and get a Tesla. So we really understand our market really well, and our partnerships that we're creating are very strong. But it's interesting what you're talking about, because I think Envoy is the precursor to AV, right? Essentially, a lot of thought around AV talks about these silos or these central locations where we're going to charge and maintain these vehicles. So we're inherently taking something that's decentralized and trying to centralize it, versus looking at all the parking around a city as an opportunity for a vehicle to, when it's not being used, drop into a parking garage, charge, have already a customer base within that building that might be using those AVs. It's going to be fully integrated within, in my opinion, in the urban environment and real estate development.
You have a background in real estate development. So are you buying real estate? Is Envoy buying real estate?
So we're looking to be that partner and that thought leader for the real estate world in regards to charging as well as mobility. These real estate owners, essentially, they're going to find, right now their only revenue source from parking is renting parking. But in the future, there's going to be other revenue streams that they can derive from that parking, which will include mobility as well as fueling up vehicles. So we work in that space, and we work hand in hand with them from pre-development all the way through to construction on, implementing both mobility and electrification plans.
So you mentioned that X level of apartment, you have a Tesla would be available. So there was a wonderful real estate project. Well, it was wonderful. I don't know if it worked. Philip Stark years ago did a project in New York City where there was a building you could rent or buy an apartment, and you had a choice of 4 different designs. Big, like 2 were regular and 2 were like updates. So the real estate developments that you're partnering with are the fleet vehicles that are available on site are tiered to the rental costs?
Yeah, completely. So we like to say we match the vehicle type to the community type. So if it's a more luxury property, we're going to put luxury vehicles. We give the property owner and developers and managers essentially a menu of all electric vehicles that are available. So they choose which one best fits their community. It's a partnership where they're essentially paying for the cost of the vehicle to be there. We're helping market it, drive the revenue, have the technology behind it, insure it, clean it, maintain it, and then we're splitting revenue with the property. So,
all right. So I live in Scottsdale. Are you familiar with cul-de-sac?
Very.
All right. So for anyone who's not, it's a real estate development that's architecturally inspired by, is it Mykonos? All of the buildings are like
stretch, but yeah,
2 degrees off axis from each other. It is a beautiful constellation of shadows. It's possible to walk across the development in shadow in daytime. It has a market. It has everything you need, but it does not include parking. You cannot own a car if you live
zero residential parking.
Right, zero residential parking. Yeah. So
in Tempe,
Arizona. So I love it in every way, but. When I was there last year, they did not yet have, I guess, deployed yet the kind of mobility I would need. There's a train station, you can get a Waymo, which kind of solves it. Are you partnered with them?
Yeah, we were one of their early partners. They just essentially started occupying this year. So as soon as there was occupancy in the building, we started deploying vehicles there. So as more occupancy grows, we're going to be deploying additional vehicles. But yeah, interesting development. Zero residential parking. I think you're contractually obligated not to own a personal car.
Within a mile. You can't park within a mile.
Yeah, and there's also a bit of a mobility wallet where they give you money that you can use towards car share, ride hail, bike share, even public transit, I believe. So yeah, they give you all the options for mobility to not own a vehicle. So that one's definitely an experiment that's really kind of pushing the edge of, I think, of what is being done and what should be done. So we'll see how successful it is, but components of that can be included in any development.
So what tier of vehicle would one get at a development like that, which is targeting under like sub 30-year-olds?
Right now, I think they have all Chevy Bolts, but that might change over time.
And then you would install the parking lot there only has like 12 or 20 spots, and it's only for delivery vehicles. So you'd have chargers in every single slot, filled with Chevy Bolts?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, hopefully they're not filled. People are using them, so there's only a few available at any given time. But yeah.
So what is the biggest hurdle, before I make a list, to your company's success?
So, the biggest hurdle for us is, cost, right? This has to be cheaper, more convenient, and more reliable than owning a vehicle. So, cost is a big component of that. I think we've seen it in all shared mobility. Insurance costs are high. Cost of deploying vehicles are high. For electric, the time to get permits and to deploy electric chargers. So those are all hurdles. Except for cost, everything else has become easier over time. But I think where we're at is, we're finding avenues on and being creative on how we insure vehicles, how people provide insurance, the membership structure of the platform. So I think we'll be able to solve that, but those are the hurdles that I see right now.
Everybody says public-private partnerships are important. They're the future. It's the greatest thing ever. And yet most of them just are, to me, just window dressing and don't work. What are you doing differently? How do they work for you?
I think I bring this back to the team all the time. Like, we're taking public money, and if we're not building a sustainable business model that can last after public funding is available, then what are we doing? It's a waste of all resources. So I think when it comes to public car sharing, it either needs to be looked at as a fully subsidized program like public transit is in a lot of ways. And we just say that's what it is and we move forward with that mentality. Or if we have to figure out a sustainable business model, it might just not be as economical as it can be for certain individuals and communities.
Have you figured out a sustainable business model? And this is being recorded.
Yeah, Envoy is a sustainable business model. I think our partnerships we're creating with the property owners, essentially we're covering our cost of goods from every vehicle we deploy, from the fee that we're getting from the property owner. It's a much different model than a Zipcar where, essentially, they're renting the parking space, they're getting the vehicle, so they have to have utilization cover their cost of goods. So Envoy in that model is interesting. As competition comes in, the pricing might change, obviously, but that is definitely sustainable. Public car sharing, we're working hard at finding the best way to work this.
Wild card questions, off script. Someone vandalizes one of the blue LA cars. How do you know? What do you do about it?
That's a very interesting question.
Smashes a window.
Yeah, I mean, so right now, a lot of it comes from our users. Our users are our eyes and ears, and what we try to create is community. Like, these vehicles are shared amongst these members that really need these vehicles. They're part of their daily needs. It's, an essential transportation thing. So we do work very closely with our community members. They're definitely a feedback loop, but we definitely are deploying new measures in technology that kind of also be our eyes and ears on site and trying to mitigate any of those issues.
The blue LA locations, how do you pick them, or how do you decide that you'd like to deploy a location here, and what does the process look like to talk to the city and get that location?
It's a great question. I mean, we're actually going through this process right now. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I'm 6 weeks on this part of the job. Mm-hmm. So, I'm actually, I've asked everybody to kind of relook at how we're deploying stations. Like, what are these requirements? Should they be a spoke in kind of that wheel where we're parking vehicles next to light transit hubs or other transit hubs, and how are we connecting these communities together? So it's something we're actually taking. The good thing is we have a lot of data now. So we have 5 years of operational data. We can see how people are using these vehicles. So we're really looking into that and evaluating that more now.
So walking distance to a transit hub is a priority.
I think it should be.
Right? I think it should be. And this audience definitely thinks it should be. Yeah. Okay. If things go perfectly, what does the company look like in 10 years?
Yeah, so I think we're a very interesting company. So Envoy is a electric mobility technology company, and we have two innovative electric car sharing models. We have essentially a public model and a private model. The private model is partnering with real estate developers to deploy electric car sharing within cities that are shared amongst neighbors. And then the public model is what we see with Blue LA, where it's a public-private partnership with a city or a transit authority or a number of different other groups to deploy electric car sharing that's publicly accessible, definitely more geared towards disadvantaged communities. And those two innovative car sharing models that are adopted by any city are going to be leaps and heads above anybody else, right? Because what electric car sharing does, it really fosters and spearheads EV adoption. Because we all have heard the terms range anxiety or other hurdles to adopt electric vehicles. But if you're able to rent one and go get groceries or pick up your kids from school, that changes your perspective on what an electric vehicle is. So we think we have a very two strong business models and services that can be adopted by cities to really help make this transition accelerate.
So if you execute perfectly, and I rent an apartment in DTLA in 7 years, what I would like is to open an app. It could be your app, it could be Uber, and see every option, Envoy and Uber or Ride or whatever. Is that kind of integration in the pipeline?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're already seeing it, right? The aggregation of different transportation modes is definitely there. I think the security is always going to be the issue. We have digital keys that essentially we're giving people. People are accessing these vehicles with no keys. So transferring digital key to somebody and how that transfers through Bluetooth, there are definitely technology hurdles. But the aggregation to see what's available to you, that should already exist and already exists in some ways, right? What we're looking to do for these apartment buildings is, what we're seeing is, especially in LA, you have 2-car families, right? It's a waste. These cars are parked 95% of the time. It's better to lower your cost of living and get rid of one car and be a 1-car family and use that, on-site electric car when you need it or Uber when you need it. And I think the mobility options are what's going to get people to reduce car ownership and also, switch over to electric as well.
I know, this is too far off on a tangent, like Turo. Like I enjoy using Turo, but I don't want a car for a day. So is there a world where the Envoy platform, allows like other maybe adjacent business models to make cars available on your app?
Yeah.
I can see you don't want to talk about that. Okay, that's cool. I hope you do that. Great idea. All right. If CoMotion, I love the conference, but you never hear anyone talk about great ideas that failed or should have been done differently or mistakes were made, but now we're going to do this differently. If you could go back in time, 10 years, and you could be a decision maker at any company you've seen on this stage.
Oh, no.
Okay, let me ask you a different question. If you go back in time in the electric car sharing business, in your sub-vertical, and do something differently to accelerate deployment of this model, what would it be? Because I look at the Autoliv cars in Paris. This is 12 years ago. To me, it should have worked.
We built this business in probably one of the most hardest times to build a business through COVID, and everything that kind of led up to COVID. A lot of the decisions we made were reactions to what was happening in front of us. So it's kind of hard to say, oh, well, with all this knowledge now, would I go back? I mean, as a founder, I would say, I probably would have focused less on fundraising and then more on, building the business, right? A lot of founders, funding is important, but, bootstrapping early on, improving early on, and then growing according to that, that's one thing I probably would do different.
Okay. Now, I spy, we have a minute or two left, at least one very dangerous person who wants to ask a question. Do you want to do a Q&A?
Sure.
Brad Templeton, my friend in the second row. I know you're dying to ask a question.
My hand up, but I never.
But I know you too well. And I also know.
I'm going to ask your question because you touched just a little bit on the question of whether the economics of car share work really well or not, and whether they'd worked in France and other places. So you said that Envoy is making money because the building owners are paying you enough, and the revenue that you're getting is enough to pay for the cars and put them in. The building owner takes all those other expenses like the parking space and installing the charging and so on. So are the building owners feeling that this is a financial win for them? Are they coming back to you and saying, let's put more cars in because we're making money hand over fist by doing this? That's what would make it sustainable, not the fact that you can get some building owners to start.
It's a great question, and I'm going to speak to you from developer eyes. If you look at any development or any hotel, any multifamily, there's amenities there. There's a pool, there's a gym, there's other amenities. But if you look at the cost to build a pool, to build a gym, to maintain it, it's very high. And even the idea of like how often are people actually using that gym or using that pool, or is it just eye candy to get somebody into the building to lease it? From the data that we see and that we're sharing with our property owners, is not only are people using this, they tend to stay in a building longer, right? So if they now have adopted this in their community and as their personal mode of transportation, for them to move to another building, it's no longer comparing rent apples to apples. You now have this transportation or mobility component. So yeah, we do see most of our clients, we focus on the top 50 multifamily owners and developers around the country. About 50% of them are currently our clients. And most of our growth happening right now is happening within the existing portfolios of those same property owners. So this is still early on in adoption. We've, again, been doing this just for a few years. But yeah, we're seeing that.
To get to the one very specific question I asked, because there's this risk, as you said, it's eye candy that people say, this is on my list of things I'd better have so I look good and I look green. A lot of EV infrastructure was put in because people felt they should look good rather than because they had an actual demand for it. And so that's the real question was, is anybody getting in 6 cars and saying, I need 12 now?
Yeah, so we're typically deploying one car for every, let's say, 100 apartment units, and we're looking for between 5 to 10 drivers out of those 100 units. So yeah, we're seeing growth within those communities as well. But yeah,
I told you about Brad. Do we have any other questions? I see an angry hand waving up top by the aisle. Oh, I know who that is. Alex Nisik, the founder and CEO of Drover AI. Cool company. Alex?
Hey, big fan of Envoy as a concept. I'm curious, where do the multimodalities fit? Is it just EVs, or given that this is kind of a community demand, what bundle offerings might you have? Are cargo bikes featured in this? E-bikes, scooters, whatever other modalities, given potential different geographic properties of developments that are there? Maybe the car or an EV isn't, and in cars, you mentioned Rivian as the largest one there, but what if you're a family and so talk about the multimodality of any bundles you might offer and what the demand looks like from your community.
Yeah, I think vehicle types for cars, at least, you can have SUVs to smaller vehicles, and that already gives options for different family sizes in economics as well. Multimodal, like micromobility and other forms, 100%. I mean, they should be included into these communities. And you do see a lot of, bike sharing plans going into these developments. We currently are focused on passenger vehicles, but in the future, whether that's an aggregation from another technology company that's putting other modes together, 100%. They should be included as part of community amenities as well.
And we're out of time. So thank you so much,
Thank you,
Aric.
everybody.